Hey, welcome back to Home Studio Pro. This time around, I want to share fully the signal chain I utilize with this microphone, the Neumann TLM-103, along with the Universal Audio Apollo Twin X. I've got the console software up on the screen, and it is important to take note that I am using this second channel here for all of my processing with this mic. You can see I've relabeled it TLM-103. Here is the stack, and this is what we will dive into. But before anything else, a couple disclaimers. Number one, the settings I'll be sharing here, they're for my voice and this microphone and this room. Everybody's optimally going to be a little bit different. And some might even say I process my sound too much. That might be true. But this is what I think sounds best for my videos, live streaming, voiceover, etc. So that's how I produce this audio. But again, everybody's a little bit different. The room is also super important. Like everything we go over here doesn't matter if your sound is like this because your room is really bad, right? So you can do all the processing in the world, but if your room is very echoey, it's not going to sound great in the end. So remember, your space is just as important as all of these fine-tuning settings here. And then what was the last thing I was going to share? Maybe that what I am about to show you here is good for me, but you might want to alter your settings in the very end. Is that what I was going to say? Well, anyway, here we go with the settings. 28 dB is where I'm gained up. I use the SSL 4000E channel strip as my unison preamp here. So I'm gained up. I'm not on a line level. I'm on a mic level. The transformer here is actually pushed in. You can hear the sound of when it's off, and now you can hear the sound of when it's on. Oh, I know what I was going to do earlier. I was just going to let you hear what this microphone sounds like completely unprocessed. I mean, that is important, right? So here's the full processing. And now here's what it sounds like with no processing. Maybe some would say this is better, or they like this, or again, I do too much processing, but I want to give you this taste of it so you can understand, what it's like straight into the Apollo, no effects, no nothing like that. But that is how this microphone sounds completely dry. Okay, let's go back to the processing here, back into the SSL 4000E. So we're gained up 28.5 dB? Can barely see my own screen from a distance. Obviously, phase reversal is not on here, and I'm not putting the pad on. No compression here on this channel strip, but I am using expansion. I've got it in expander mode, not gate 1 or gate 2. I like expander mode the best. You can see my settings here for threshold, for range, and also for a fast attack, and also the release as fast as possible. And watch when I stop talking here. It lights up to -6, or as in 6 dB of noise reduction, of expansion. And I'll show you what this sounds like when I turn expansion on and off entirely. So see where it says expansion in? I'll turn that off in just a second and I'll be quiet. Can you hear that if you listen close? There's just a little bit more room noise, and this is such a sensitive but a quiet mic. I think 7 dB of self-noise from this 103. It's amazingly quiet but sensitive mic. So, you do hear some things if I'm really quiet. I hear a truck driving by in the distance when I turn that expander off, but when I turn it on, I don't hear it as much. Anyway. Just goes to show you what that's all about. So expansion is lowering the lowest sounds, and especially noticeable when I'm not talking. Low cut or high pass filter is off. I'm not using that here. I am cutting on the high side at about 15,000 hertz. Then we get into the EQ section, and I'm a firm believer always of EQing first and then compression with voice. I just feel like you should do all your cutting and boosting kind of before you put the sandwich together, and that's what compression is at the very end. So in terms of high frequency, if each one of these little dots is about 3 dB, I'm boosting maybe 1.5 at about 4,000 hertz, kind of a fundamental speech range. Then I'm cutting here, I'm de-essing at -4 dB. If that's at 3, I'm a little bit more than that. So -4 dB at about 6,500 hertz. Now on my U87, I actually cut at this same spot, but I don't cut as much. That's because this mic has so much more of a presence boost that I'm really actually trying to, reduce that a lot more, the sibilance, so that my sibilance is not scintillating your ears. Am I saying that right? Turning that down at about 6,500 hertz on a pretty tight Q. Then in terms of the low mids, I always cut right here at about 250, 275. So 0.2, 0.3 as in 0.2 thousand hertz, which is, 200 to 300. So about 260 or 270 is where I'm cutting there. I'm actually cutting a significant amount. Let's call it 4.5 dB. And on a relatively tight Q there, somewhere between 2 and 3. Then in the low frequency at about 100 on a bell curve, you notice I'll have that button push there. I'll take it off and show you. Actually, you know what? Let me go back and show you this real fast. If I bring up this boxy region, what does it sound like if I bring this in? Sounds different, right? It sounds I'll bring it all the way up. I mean, this is very bad sounding and nasally, but it's that sound right there that even right here at detent, I hear some of that and I'm trying to take that out. I'm trying to emphasize the mids maybe or the 1000, and I'm also trying to emphasize the low end by cutting this at 250, 270. It's kind of a muddy area. Honestly, if I boost it right here, this is kind of a muddy area of my voice when you really hear it. But then when I take it back out, it sounds so much cleaner. All right, so then at 100 hertz is where I'm at here on the low frequency. Again, bell curve. Boosting to about 3 dB. You can hear what this sounds like if I continue to boost it. I mean, that's like FM radio style or, that's way too much. It sounds awful. Conversely, if I cut it, obviously that has a totally different sound to it as well too. So about 3 dB is where I had it before. And again, here's with the EQ in and on. Here's what it sounds like if I turn it off. Maybe a significantly different sound. But again, put your headphones on or listen with the studio monitor to really digest that. On the slider here, I'm boosted up maybe 2.5 dB, and same thing here on the output. I've got it boosted just a little bit so you can hear that sound. And let me just go back ahead here and reset everything to make sure that I've got the settings where I started with. Okay, one more time here. And that's how simple it is. It's how simple it is to change microphones and all the settings right there. Okay. So we are set back on these same settings. So we talked about the E channel up there. You'll see the 1176 here. I'm not actually even using that. It appears in the chain, but I don't use it. So just to be clear, I used to use it. In fact, I can turn it on for you here. It sounds a little bit different, just even a little bit more compressed if that's on. And yeah, you can see it's doing a little bit of work here and there to cut off those fast transients, but I'm going to go back and turn that off. Okay. Now to the 1073 Legacy. I am boosting a little bit here, call it a dB or so. On the high frequency, this mic has enough presence on the top end. I think this is like a high shelf at like 14,000. Not doing anything there, but I am cutting at about 700 hertz here to about 3 dB on this scale. That's another region, right? So 250 needs cutting for me. 700 needs cutting for me. That's why I'm doing it here. And I am boosting at 60 hertz, let's call it 4 dB. So I'm boosting at 100 on the E channel, and I'm boosting about 60 here. Watch if I alter this. It's going to give you a different sound there versus if I really bring it in here. I mean, that's a lot of bottom end right there, right? It's going to rattle some subs. So I'll bring that back down to where it was. And then low cutting, I'm doing that at about 80 hertz. So again, let's show you what it looks like here with, let me just reset all these settings once again. Sometimes when I make changes, it's kind of nice just to go back to how it was before. Here's what it sounds like with the EQ on, and here's what it sounds like with this Neve 1073 Legacy off. A little bit more boxy here. It's just as soon as I flip the EQ on here, I definitely feel like it has an improved sound. Okay, so that's that. That was my stomach, apparently. Hopefully you didn't hear that too well. You probably did, though. It's a really good mic. We're low cutting. You see everything going on there with the 1073. And now my favorite part, the LA2A Gray Edition. Now there's a bunch of different types of LA2As. I'm not here to say that one is better or that maybe even this is the best, but this is the one that I like using the most. I've got it on the limiter mode. I've got the compression settings here at about 2 o'clock. And then with gain and peak reduction, I've always found that the best way to do this is to have these about 10 apart, whether one is higher than the other by 10 or lower than the other by 10. But if they're in the 10 region, and what am I here at about 35 and 45? So I'm about 10. But if one of these were at 20 and the other one were at 70 or 80, something's probably not correct with your settings. And what I'm doing here, and again, this all matters, how close I'm talking into the mic, how loud I'm speaking. If this mic is, pushed away, or I'm farther away or off axis, it's not going to sound the same. So this is very much tuned to my voice from this distance. And what you're noticing here is that when I talk, this gain reduction meter it's moving, like it's constantly working, but it's never really going above -3. So I'm not compressing too much. Conversely, it is moving, so I am always compressing just a little bit. Now, obviously, compression does this so that when I'm really close on the mic here, it's, I can talk at this really, really low volume. And you can probably hear me okay right now. I mean, this is audible enough. And at the same time, I can also, hang on here, yell really loud. And you saw that it started doing a lot of work here. The needle kind of got slammed to the other direction. So I don't want this thing to be constantly over here at the far end, but I also constantly don't want it to be not moving at all and static. I want it to be working just a little bit. That lets me know that I'm getting good compression, that somebody listening on a mobile device isn't going to have to constantly ride the volume up or down to inevitably hear what I'm saying. So I do like a little bit amount of compression in this, and that's how I've arrived. Again, these settings can be one or the other. I mean, if I turn this peak reduction all the way up, now you see that even under normal speech, like the volume went way down, but look at under normal speech, look how slammed that thing is, as opposed to, where was it? Right around there at 45 or so. So again, here is what the microphone sounds like completely clean. And look, this has a good sound right out of the box. I'm not here to try and destroy that. I'm just trying to give myself more of a signature sound with this microphone. That's why I've come up with these settings right here. That's what I've kind of landed on. This used to be my everyday mic. Since then, I've moved on to its bigger brother, the U87. But the TLM-103 is fantastic. And when paired with this Universal Audio Apollo Twin-X interface and ecosystem, it does great things. You can use a variety of different signal chains to arrive at kind of what I have here. I want to make that very clear, but these are my settings. These are how I use them. And hopefully you understand these are why I use them. And by the way, if you've got your own home studio or you do voiceover and you're looking for a tune-up, or you're a UAD user, I would love to help you out. I do consultations virtually, so hit me up on my channel, go to the About section, and send me an email or leave a comment here on this video. I'll generally get around to those sooner than later. But I would love to help you out. I do that as a service and had a lot of successful clients already that we worked with. So that's it for this video. Thumbs up if it provided you some value. Subscribe to Home Studio Pro. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time.